Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for those people who have their natal Saturn in the fifth house of love, creativity, and fun and games. The house of pleasure, the house of children. But Saturn is here. So Saturn is the lord of karma. It's the planet that's associated with discipline, productivity, being serious, taking life seriously. Organization, things like that. So, do these two elements mesh well? Not really. So, this can indicate the kind of person who is very stiff when it comes to having a good time. So, parties may not be something that really, floats your boat. You may be more interested if you're not on the job and you have time off of doing something around the house because at least it's productive. Going to a concert, going to a party may seem like a waste of time. And yet, as you get older, especially after your first Saturn return, around the age of 30, you will start to loosen up a bit. That naughty part of my mind said, get that stick out of your butt. Because there's a wet blanket effect here. The fifth house in the universal chart is ruled by Leo. So this is Leo's domain. Leo's ruled by the sun. And the sun is just this positive energy that flows. The fifth house can be your hobbies. So Saturn here can be the kind of person who might not want to do something, even if they are creative and they have talent. If they can't make a living from it, they might say, screw it. I do want to give a shout out to advancedastrology.com because I did compile a list using their information, but what I just said to you, I didn't get from there because I read a lot from a lot of different sources and store it in this, computer in the middle of my head, but that computer in the middle of my head isn't quite able to retrieve exactly where I get stuff, so I can only regurgitate stuff. But I try to put in my own words, so there's that. And another thing that I didn't get from this one website that I just mentioned was, about, in addition to talking about being serious about hobbies, is also talking about, just like, they do mention the inner child maybe not being very active, but I've read before that something may have happened in your childhood that made it so that your childhood ended very abruptly and you had to kind of grow up quickly. And that can be a lot of times, I feel, how the inner child gets blocked because the inner child really, like if you're somebody who grows up and you're allowed to have a childhood, I think that that gives you the ability to have that positive nature and spontaneous nature where you don't see life as just, endless drudgery. And in some cases, some people enjoy their slavery or the drudgery that they feel that they must endure in life, that kind of martyrdom. So, I mean, when I say enjoy, they might not really be happy, but they just feel like it's their sense of duty. There's a real strong sense of duty with Saturn and with the sign of Capricorn. So, that can be a situation where it just stays with you for life, where let's say you had a parent die when you were a child and your surviving parent had to kind of pick up the slack. And maybe, like, especially at least in the past, if the father was the one who passed away, the mother having to scramble and get work, back at a time, I would say if you were born before, the 70s, especially when women were not working in the workforce, in as great a number, that there might have been this tendency to be like, okay, money is tight. Even some of the children, you have to get a paper route, or you have to, that I sound like I'm 100 years old, don't I? Because I'm talking about paper routes and all this stuff, women not working and all of that. But it's something that if you're over 50 years old, you don't have to be over 70 or 80, but you remember all those things. And that may have been the end of your childhood. You might have gotten a paper route, you might have babysat and sat kids, and then you ended up getting a full-time, getting a more serious job to really help out with the household. And that can stay with a person for life. But like I said, as Saturn is a sign of old age. As the person has accomplished what they want, they become more mellow, they become more playful, and they let go. And so you may discover that you're able to feel more of that joy that is associated with the fifth house, because you might feel like spontaneity is very difficult for you. When people feel that kind of thing, they have a hard time just letting their hair down. And so parties are very awkward events. You may just in general feel awkward. The fifth house is the dating scene, and you may feel very stiff when you're on a date. Like you can't just have fun in a very spontaneous way. You're even just having love relationships at the fifth house. The fifth house isn't like committed relationships, it's more of the dating scene. But even in that more casual encounters, that may be delayed for you. And you tend to have a serious attitude towards love. So flirting is probably out of the question for somebody like you. Now, let's say your sun is in Gemini or Leo or Sagittarius. This may be modified a little bit, and maybe it's not as hard for you. Regardless of your sun sign or Venus sign, you might be cautious about love. The fifth house can be love affairs and kind of, that sporty. Well, I'm saying sporty, but I'm thinking about the sports angle of the fifth house, but that, thinking of love as kind of an amusement, a pleasure, a game. This is a house of recreational sex. So you may be much more serious about it, much more cautious, and not interested in something casual. And I can see a good and a challenging side to that, because on the good side, it can mean that you're not treating other people like they are expendable. And I think in many cases, that kind of an attitude can be quite damaging to the individual, whether they are male or female. They don't realize how much just kind of having friends with benefits and those kinds of relationships, how much it can be very stressful for them on an emotional level. It may not seem that way when you're trying to pursue pleasure, but having that sense of duty or responsibility might have a certain good side to it. And then on the other side, being overly cautious or being, treating everybody like they're potentially going to be a relationship for the rest of your life can make it very hard for you just to kind of flow and get to know, that's the whole point of dating, just to see if you're compatible with people, but you have to meet enough people to be able to compare that with. And that might not be something that you want to do. You might not want to date around or anything like that. So it has its plus and minus sides to it. And you might be interested in people who are older than you. Now, for instance, Venus in Capricorn, but Venus is the ruler of the seventh house, not the fifth house. So it's more of the committed partnership house. But just in general, Venus in Capricorn, for instance, is Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, can be that type of person who is actually attracted to older partners. And this can be either gender, and obviously it can be same-sex relationships, but when I said either gender, I mean because usually you think of the, in heterosexual relationships, you think of the younger woman and the older man, but you might have the younger man and the older woman. And there are definitely younger men who are attracted to older women. Now, one of the things that is being, I think, attracted, why the person is attracted to that is because Saturn represents old age. But we're talking about maturity. They're looking for somebody some maturity in a love partner. So, needless to say, if a man has this position and is attracted to women, he might be, let's say, in his middle age years. Is it middle age years, or older, even as a senior, and be attracted to women his own age, and never would even turn his head for a woman who is, obviously decades younger than himself. That he might be the one type of guy who wouldn't do something like that. So, like everything else, Saturn improves with age. And so you mellow when you get older, including in love, and you can be a lot more comfortable around these issues. Now, this is also the house of children, and because Saturn has a restrictive influence, oh, by the way, and I said, Saturn can be delays, but also you may find it hard to even find people to date. I mean, for some reason, now this may be because of other behaviors. If you're somebody who's a workaholic, for instance, and you're always working, you just may never make the time or find the time or be in a position to, if you're working in an area that doesn't have a lot of other people, or you're in a foreign country where you're not going to be staying, you're always traveling and things like that, then that could certainly be why that is occurring as well. But something keeps that from happening. So there's a delay, there are obstacles, but same with children. You may have an idea in your mind how many kids you want, and you don't have as many kids, or you don't even have kids at all, and you had wanted children. You may have a serious responsibility to children if you have them, and so you might be kind of a strict parent. You might, because you feel responsible for them, so you want them to fly right. So look at that, because sometimes it can be too harsh. And perhaps if you are an older parent, so after your first Saturn return, this can lessen its influence over you, and you can just kind of chill. So let's say you're a person who has children under the age of 30, and certainly a fair number do, probably not that many nowadays, but a certain percentage. You may feel like you have to be very strict with them, and then perhaps when they're in their teens, you kind of relax a little bit because you've gotten past your first Saturn return, and you're getting more and more laid back about it. But you might always have that part of you that is very feeling that sense of duty towards your children, and so you just make sure that you're not controlling, but you can still be a responsible parent for sure. And also, you may feel a karmic relationship with them. And that can mean that you feel that you have some kind of mission to fulfill with them in terms of so anyway, that may be something where you just recognize that you just feel like the strong bond with them for whatever reason. And again, like, when I talk about feeling a sense of responsibility, sometimes that may have something to do with it if in a past life you had some kind of a situation arise and, like an accident or a death of a child, and in this lifetime you vow to get it right, that you're not going to be negligent in any way. And when I said about being too strict, obviously there is age appropriate guidance as well. I don't have kids, so here I am giving advice to people. Actually, I don't like to give advice to anyone, but I just, when I said too strict, because Saturn can be controlling. And in the fifth house, if you're dealing with children or you're dealing with love relationships, when you exhibit those controlling behaviors, it can actually have a boomerang effect. It can actually work against you. So you have to at least look at them and, be realistic and put them in the context of life as a whole, I suppose. But yeah, so that's what I have for you. I hope this resonated. And if you would like a private reading, the link is below. I'm at RainaMoonAstrology.com. Take care. Bye.